What's up guys? I'm Tano. Welcome to another video. So I've been spending the past couple of days working on the acoustic treatment here in my studio. So I've been building a bunch of 6-inch panels and bass traps like the ones you see behind me. And today I'm going to show you how I built them. But before we get into that, if you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell because I'll be posting lots of videos relating to home studio production, recording, mixing, and all that sort of stuff. So if you like that kind of content, subscribe, like this video, comment any questions you have or requests below. Alright, let's do this. Alright guys, welcome back. So you can see here the finished panel that I'll be showing you how to make. It's a 48-inch by 32-inch, 6-inch deep panel full of rock wool insulation. So let's start off by going over all the tools and materials that you'll need. To start off, you'll need a bunch of 1x6 lumber. For each panel, you'll need a little less than 14 feet of wood, and they usually come in 8-foot pieces, so about 2 pieces of wood per panel. Now you'll also need to get rock wool safe and sound insulation. These bags come with 12 16-inch wide bats, and for these 6-inch deep panels, I'm using 4 bats per panel. You'll also need to get some breathable fabric. I'm just using some basic cheap weed barrier fabric. Grab something to finish your wood with. I decided to just use some basic mineral oil. Lastly, you'll need some very thick cardstock or thin pieces of wood. Now, as far as tools go, you'll need an electric drill, drill bits, some screws, a staple gun and plenty of staples, sandpaper, and an electric orbital sander would help, and an X-Acto knife. Alright, let's get to the building. So first you're going to want to cut your wood to size. We're going to cut 2 pieces of the 1x6 lumber to 48 inches and 2 pieces to 30.5 inches. This is what you need for one panel, so cut enough wood for every panel you plan to make. Then we're going to lay out the frame by putting the 48-inch long pieces on the outside and the 30.5-inch pieces on the inside, making a perfect rectangle. Then we're going to drill pilot holes at each joint, screwing into the side of the 48-inch piece, all the way through into the end of the 30.5-inch piece. Do this all the way around at each corner of the frame. Once you've drilled all your pilot holes, now it's time to screw the pieces together. Simply put a screw into each hole that you've drilled and screw in until the screw head is flush with the piece of wood. Again, do this all the way around at each corner. Once you've finished screwing all the pieces together, now you should have a nice frame ready to turn into a panel. So the next step is to sand the panel so it's nice and smooth. I suppose this is optional, but I really think it's a good idea and it gives your panels a nicer, more professional, finished look. So I sanded the whole frame first with 80 grit sandpaper to round all the edges and corners, and then I did another pass with 220 grit sandpaper to make it all nice and smooth. After I finished sanding with the orbital sander, I then took a piece of 600 grit sandpaper and went over the frames again to make them super smooth. After you finish sanding, now it's time to oil the wood or use whatever wood finish you have decided to use. Mineral oil is real easy to apply with a rag. Once your frames are all sanded and oiled, now it's time to put the fabric on. Now, I decided to do this a little differently than most people. I really wanted to keep the wood exposed. So what I did was cut a piece to size with some overhang of a few inches on each edge, lay it down flat, upside down inside the frame so the outer face of the fabric is on the ground. Now what we're gonna do is cut a bunch of strips of that cardstock that I mentioned earlier. You can cut strips of different sizes, but basically you're gonna want enough to cover the whole perimeter of the frame. Now we're gonna take a piece of cardstock and put it over the fabric on one side of the frame. Staple through the cardstock and through the fabric and into the wood. Now this is the most crucial part of making this frame. You really wanna try to stretch the fabric as tight as you can before you staple. Staple in the center of each side before doing the corners. After you've put one piece of cardstock in the center of each side, you can move on to the corners. Again, making sure to stretch the fabric as tight as you possibly can and making a fold in each corner so it's nice and neat. Once you've finished stapling the cardstock all the way around the perimeter so the fabric is nice and taut, it's time to put in our insulation. Each piece of insulation is 3 inches thick, so for this 6-inch panel, we're gonna put 2 layers of insulation using 4 pieces total. Once you've put 4 pieces of insulation inside the frame, it's time to put on the backing fabric. If you want, you can use the same fabric you used on the front, but I decided to use a slightly different kind of weed barrier fabric. This time, we don't need to use the cardstock, we can just staple straight through the fabric and into the back side of the wood. Again, staple in the center of each side and then do the corners. Finally, once you have the centers and the corners done, go around the perimeter stapling every 1 to 2 inches. Once all the stapling is done, all that's left is to cut off the excess fabric. So go around the perimeter with your X-Acto knife, cutting off all the overhanging fabric. Once you're done with that, you'll have a beautiful 6-inch acoustic absorption panel. These panels can have many uses in the studio. They can be standing, movable gobos, they can be wall panels, and they can be corner bass traps. As you can see here, I made a bunch of them and I'm using them for all of those uses. For the wall panels, I hung them with a simple picture hanging wire. For the bass traps, I stacked them and secured them together with these little blocks and pegs. The gobos, I put some extra pieces of wood on the back to make them look a little nicer. Alright guys, that's it for me today. I hope this video will help you build some panels for your studio because they really do help a lot and these are pretty fun to build. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. See you in the next one.